Hey everybody, welcome back to the Conservation Conversation. I'm your host, Eric Crown. It's great to see everybody here again. Today we have an amazing episode. We are going to go and talk to some people that are putting their body and their knowledge on the front lines of anti-poaching and out there fighting for the survival of species. And it's an amazing, amazing show. And what I love is that we can travel everywhere. So let's go ahead and start in and let's talk about anti-poaching. All right, welcome back. It's good to see everybody here. I always love this show. You know, it's here we go. Put my little looks like a UN translator in my hair. All right. Hi, Andrea. It's nice to see you. Yeah, I'm very excited about today. You know, poaching is an amazing worldwide issue, and today we have an incredible guest from South Africa, and it's amazing. They've actually put together a giveaway for our audience today, so it's going to be awesome. Hello, Claire from New Zealand there. Fantastic. I'm glad you're going to be able to join us today. So Claire is also a big environmentalist, and I don't want to give away too much, but somewhat of an activist, I would say. Anyway, it's great to have you guys here today. Now, I know we're going to be talking about poaching, but I think one of the important things to start with is to realize that we can also see this difficult situation as what's considered a hope spot. So what I wanted to do was actually start today with a great quote from Martin Luther King, and he said, "But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars." Only when it's dark enough can you see the stars. And I think what we're talking about right now is, hey, Paula, hey, Carrie. I think what we're talking about is, as we talk about poaching, we're going to be talking about certain animals that have become extinct and animals that are on the brink of extinction. Hey, Bruce. I'm glad you're joining us today. Always good to see you on the show, Bruce. Oh, Bruce, by the way, next week, I'm very excited. We have a couple vegan and vegetarian nutritionists that are going to be on the show. So we're going to be able to kind of reopen that discussion next week, which is exciting. But so anyway, as I was saying with poaching, you know, the quote really hits it because, you know, when we talk about one or two cases that involve poaching, what we see is actually an amazing group of people that have stepped forward. So in the depth of all the difficult aspects of it, a huge group of heroes have stepped forward and have decided that they are going to put an end to it. And so we're going to meet some of those people today, and they're from Wildlife Campus. I think I put it on there, but if you guys haven't tried it yet, go to wildlifecampus.com. You can register for free, and they open tons of classes for you, and they actually train in anti-poaching classes, and it is amazing. We're going to go through the whole site and get to talk to them in a little bit, talk about poaching and anti-poaching. And, you know, what I say, it's a hope spot because, you know, one of the stories that's one of the saddest stories involves the Black Rhino, which the numbers got down to almost, I believe, under 3,000. It was about 2,500 or so left. And that led to conservation efforts that have doubled the number of them left. So again, in our darkest hour here, you know, we see the fires. We see, hey, Camilla, glad you're joining us today. You know, we see the fires, we see climate change. We're seeing all forms of these issues and problems that are starting up. And we are feeling a little bit overwhelmed. But again, in that difficulty and in that darkness comes our true struggle and our true battle. And we are able to bring forward and fight against what we have. And Wildlife Campus is a great example of that. And they're also a great example of how we use technology to move forward our nature. You know, it's pretty cool. It's like the using, you know, the techniques of tomorrow in order to preserve what we had in the past. So I think that that's a very beautiful aspect of everything. So, all right. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about today is poaching in itself. Now, just to give you an overall idea, and these numbers may not be fully up to date, so if Jonathan or Eloise on the show have updated numbers, please feel free to let us know about that. So what I wanted to talk about first is, I didn't know this, but rhinos are one of the oldest group of mammals. They're virtually living fossils, which is amazing. They had estimated that at the beginning of the 20th century, there was about 500,000. And the numbers now, I believe, are less than about 20,000 worldwide. Now, poaching is, unfortunately, a $19 billion a year business. So, a lot of this goes into Chinese medicine. Some of it does go into creating weapons and blades for knives is used. It's not in the same sense of ivory. Rhino horn, and the rhino is mostly what we're going to be talking about today for South Africa, but the rhino horn itself is mostly used just for traditional medicines. Now, China had banned the rhino horn and tiger bone trade in 1993, but China had said that they wanted to repeal that, and everybody jumped up. Hey, Heather, glad you're joining us today. And Heather works on conservation and preservation up in Seattle, actually in Bremerton, on the Dominion tug, which is an amazing old tugboat that she and Captain Dave have managed to restore. So as we talk about the rhino industry, the rhino horn industry, if China is to reopen and change that law, and they're still talking about amending it, they're talking about amending it so that they can use the rhino horn for medical use, which means hospitals can use it in bringing this traditional medicine, and that would just create a huge influx. So anyway, that's something that we all have to keep our eyes open for, and it's something that is brand new news and very dangerous. So I also wanted to now talk about what the problem is that we're using it for, and that is Chinese medicine. So if we look at Chinese medicine, it starts with the 16th century Chinese pharmacist. And what he said, rhino horn is used to treat. Now, mind you, this is in the 16th century. Hey, Vicky, I'm glad you're joining us today. Always nice to see you here. I know you're always a clean water activist and environmentalist. So, awesome. Heather's in the engine room. Oh, I love hearing that. So guys, yeah. So what happens is we have Chinese medicine in the 16th century. Now you have to remember that they didn't discover vivisection until 1778 when William Harvey created the knowledge that the heart pumps blood. Until then, we have to remember that the belief was that the liver created blood and it sloshed around our bodies. Hence, bloodletting seemed like a very modern medicine at the time. So this is where these beliefs come from. And it says that rhino horn is used to treat fever, rheumatism, gout, snake bites, hallucinations, typhoid, headaches, hangovers, carbuncles, which is a great word, right? Vomiting, food poisoning, and devil possession. Now, contrary to popular belief, it's not used as an aphrodisiac, and it's not sold as an aphrodisiac, but it's ground into powder and added to water and sold in a variety of ways in Chinese medicine, none of which are proven, none of which have any real scientific or medical validity. So that's what has created the huge black market for the rhino horns. And this is what has created the rhino and has really put the rhino in a lot of danger. And it's very complicated down there. A lot of us that are outsiders, and like I said, I'm excited today. We get to talk to the folks down in South Africa. But, for a lot of us outsiders, it's very confusing what is happening down there. There is actual private reserves and game reserves that have raised, these wild animals back from extinction. So, all right, we are going to get to Wildlife Campus here in a few minutes, and we're running a little late. If you guys are watching the show, I'm going to call you in about maybe 10 minutes at the most, and then we're going to talk. I cannot wait. So this is going to be very exciting, guys. This is what's so cool about this show is we have an option to talk around the world. I mean, we have our guests from South Africa today. We have people from England, people from Scotland, people from Romania, people from New Zealand. This is us as a collective consciousness growing together, sharing information together, and thinking about what we have here. So I wanted to now talk about the next very famous rhino case that a lot of you will probably remember, which was Sudan. And Sudan was the world's last northern white rhino male. Now, there are 2 females that are still there, so they're not extinct yet. But obviously the problem is the male has died without propagating. So when Sudan died, unless they can get in vitro to work, it's possible that this branch of the white rhino will die. Now, there is a southern white rhino that still has a population. Oh no, technical issues. Let's see. Hopefully it's you guys back. Let me know if everything's working okay here. So now this white rhino spent its life from 1975 to 2009 in a Czech Republic zoo. So yeah, there's no words for that really. And eventually it was moved into a conservancy in Kenya, and he unfortunately died in March 2018. And it garnered a lot of press and a lot of attention for the rhino and the plight of the rhino and the fact that they are becoming extinct in our lifetime. You know, we never thought we would see things becoming extinct in our lifetime. So it is quite crazy. Okay, so anyway, now after we talked about Sudan, I want to bring up the truly biggest problem that is faced right now, which is the black rhino. And again, its horn goes into the traditional medicine. Now check out that. Between 1960 and 1995, black rhino numbers dropped by 98% to less than 2,500. Since then, its numbers have doubled thanks to conservation efforts. So although it's still critically endangered, it's, again, we are finding a hope spot in the middle of the darkness. We are seeing that resiliency is natural. We are seeing that we can do this. And we are seeing that there's always a possibility to bring a species back as long as people get together and figure out how to conserve. Let's see, Claire. Claire says, I saw something online about anti-poaching's painting horns pink, which was stopping poaching's targeting. Oh, that's very interesting. Claire, we will ask, we're going to ask the folks at Wildlife Campus if that's something, if that's one of the approaches that they're taking, and see. And if anybody that might be watching the show right now that works in anti-poaching, please let us know. And yeah, I would say hallelujah to those that are out there saving. And that's the other thing I want to talk about. Before we go to them, I want to mention how dangerous what they do is. Now, these guys are not ones to talk about this. Hey, Kat, I'm glad you're able to join us. Thank you. Kat makes amazing documentaries in Florida about a lot of water issues that are amazing examples of what's happening in all the towns in America. So I highly recommend to go to Cat Chase Media on Facebook. It's one of my favorite pages, and I love your work, Kat. Thanks for joining today. You know, and so what I did want to bring up that, being a ranger, since 2009 to 2016, they estimate that there's the Thin Green Line Foundation estimates there's about 600 rangers have been killed. And they estimate that there's about 2 killed a day while on duty. Think about that. These people are volunteering and training. They're going to Wildlife Campus and they're learning how to do anti-poaching. And then they're going in the field with one of Wildlife Campus's many partners. And they're going out, and they know the odds are that 2 rangers are killed per day on duty battling anti-poachers, accidents that happen in there. It's amazing. So, they're literally putting their bodies on the line to try to grind an extinction and halt it. And hats off, because that is amazing. That's another aspect I want to bring up as well real fast. Everybody has a part to play. There are special forces guys out there, and there are anti-poaching women units. There are amazing men and women, everybody all around the world fighting. And there are people, we need boots on the ground, but we also need people online that share information, share memes. A lot of times in activism and environmentalism, we find all these divisions. And I just want to remind everybody that there is no division. We're all part of the same army. And some of us are good at computers. Some of us are good at bringing together people. Some of us are good at being in the field and physically pulling a gun up and stopping a poacher. All of us have a part to play. And that's, again, what brings me back to my guest, which is why I'm so excited that they decided to do this. I want you guys to know, I started taking their classes months ago, before I even asked them if they'd be on the show, because they offer free information. It's amazing. I was able to learn about the marine life there, survival in marine life, all these incredible things, because they want to share knowledge, because they have the same belief that the knowledge will lead to caring, and that will lead to wanting to try to help. And that is the connection that we all have and that we all need. And what I love about what they've done is they found a way to online bring in people from around the world, bring in some money on that information, and then work with partners to make sure that the money goes to in-field practical and that everything gets covered. So it's an amazing way that they have found to allow conservation to keep fighting. And as all of us know that have our hearts in conservation and environmentalism, there's not any money. It's very hard to keep programs running. And these guys are doing it, and they're doing it just to have the chance to go out and possibly be killed in the line of duty. So again, I just want to take a moment to really, really, really give the proper respect to all the men and women out in the field that are putting their lives on the line for the animals' sake every day. And for everybody else that's online, that's part of that community, that keeps the information flowing, that's just as important, because we have a way to connect worldwide now. And just as Wildlife Campus, and you'll hear this again, but they have students in over 155 countries. How amazing is that? That is getting people to care all around the world about what's happening in their world, and their world is our world. So, we all think about Africa. We all think about these amazing wild animals. We all want to go see a giraffe or a rhino or an elephant. Incredible. None of us want to go to zoos. That's not necessarily the answer. I think a lot of us would rather find ways to go see them in their natural element. So again, Wildlife Campus is this incredible way that allows people to bring the information together. And so, anyway, it's exciting to see everybody here today. Again, we have this international community of people that want to make a difference, and that's exactly what Wildlife Campus is doing. And we are going to actually go ahead and watch a video from these guys. And let's take a look here. So what I'd like to do is I'm just going to give a very brief introduction from the CEO of the company, and a little bit of a background of what Wildlife Campus is. And while I'm doing that, we are going to get the folks at Wildlife Campus on the line and get everything ready, and then hopefully come back and do an interesting interview. And we're also going to show another. Hey, Barbara. Oh, Barbara, it's so nice to see you. Barbara is always an inspiration to me. Barbara is been a lifelong advocate for animal rights and has been one of a very strong driving force. So, Barbara, it's always a great honor to have you on the show. And and Andrea, thank you for tuning in. And that's the thing, guys, we have these issues worldwide. So, what we're talking about today, anti-poaching, we are talking about a couple things. We are talking about taking resource, and conservation is a difficult, tricky topic, because a lot of it has to do with conserving resource and managing that. We always talk about that relationship between man and nature, and how there's that sliding scale of morality on what we allow through industry, and how much of our nature we're allowed to go from our natural resources to their natural resources. So that's where poaching comes in. Poaching happens in every country, and it happens in every way. One thing I will say, an amazing step forward, California has banned the fur trade. So thank you, California. That is an amazing step forward. Now, I can't even believe that fur is kind of still a thing. I don't know, maybe in other parts of the country it's more important, but in here in America, it's sort of a weird idea, I think. Anyway, here we go. We are going to go ahead and just take a quick intro look at what these guys do. And I'm actually going to run two videos. One is an introductory from the CEO, which is a fascinating background on what is happening. And then the second is an amazing video that Wildlife campus sent to me and said, you guys go ahead, use this video, and it's really cool. It shows a little bit of what everybody has to go through and the devotion these folks have to fighting poaching and to making a difference and to making sure the nature as we know it is around as we know it and as we want to see it. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and watch a video. It's going to take a couple minutes, and I will be back with the folks from Wildlife Campus.
So the history of Wildlife Campus. So Wildlife Campus has its origins in a website called africam.com. So africam.com were the first guys, in fact, that put cameras at waterholes, and it was an instant worldwide success. They soon found they had hundreds of thousands of viewers watching millions of images of cameras, but they had a problem. So they were getting vast amounts of mail, and the mail was all around the same type of thing. What is that elephant doing? What kind of antelope is that? Why is that bird doing what it's doing? Why are there no springbok? And questions of this nature. So Africam quickly found out that they had a vast audience that were looking for more than just the camera image, more than just the live image streaming out of the African bush. They wanted to know what was going on. And out of that, Wildlife Campus was born. And it started out with just a single game ranging or field guiding course, followed up by wildlife management, and grew from there. Today, Wildlife Campus offers, over 40 different courses to over 25,000 registered students in about 155 countries worldwide.
All right. So, first of all, we've sort of been talking a little bit about what's happening out there. If you can give us just a little bit more of an idea of what you guys do on a day-to-day basis.
On a day-to-day basis. On a day-to-day basis, I'm a big keyboard warrior. Hey? We deal a lot with people on the internet, on actual emails and so. It's handling a lot of information queries and so as well. Hey? So people generally contact us because they have interest in wildlife for one or the other particular reason. They tourists coming to visit Africa, they want to experience Africa in a different way. They want to know what are they seeing. Hey? That was what our CEO was on about that as well. Wildlife Campus basically comes from the Africam initiative, and people wanted to know more. They wanted to know what is behind the picture and what are we seeing there. Why is the elephant pushing over that tree, and they wanted answers to that question. So from there, Wildlife Campus grew as an initiative to write a course to inform those people, and that's how our field guiding game ranging course basically came together as a piece. Hey? And a lot of courses followed soon. So that was basically the beginning of Wildlife Campus, and people could get an answer on their questions online by going through the course material. Hey? Now we're nearly 20 years later, and the business plan is slightly changed into that regard, that like the field guiding course, for instance, is made by Wildlife Campus and is owned by Wildlife Campus. But of those 40 plus courses we have online, we've also contracted some of those out. For instance, the Game Lodge Management course is a course that is written in collaboration with Wilderness Safaris, which is basically one of the biggest players in the industry when it comes to game lodges in sub-Saharan Africa. Hey? So there, all the royalties flow back to the Wilderness Wildlife Trust on a yearly basis. So for every course that is online sold, 25% instantly goes to the Wilderness Wildlife Trust, which makes a nice sum over a yearly basis towards contribution, and that's just for that one course. If we're talking about the anti-poaching course, we've also got partners there. So we've been out with KAINAV. I've sent you that video. We were out in the field doing some field research. So they have a conservation organization, and they've revised or theoretical anti-poaching course as well. And so for every anti-poaching course sold, all the royalties again go towards KAINAV's organization, KAINAV Conservation. And that keeps those organizations going, of course. Huh? So on a day-to-day basis, it's a bit more computer work than people would think. It's also, of course, establishing contacts, contacting people for this, that, or the other, and then eventually also going out in the field. Hey? That's the best part of it, interacting with students on a daily basis, and then also getting to see them during training. Hey?
You know, that I was saying, that's one of the things for me. I saw your guys' website and I started going in on the marine life, which I'm always fascinated about, especially I was taking a, plastics course, marine debris. And I was amazed at how much information you guys offer and how much you give. And it really brought me in and it made me amazed. I said, I want to go dive there. I want to go see all this. So, what I think is beautiful about what you guys do is you've brought in, as he said, over 155 different countries. What do you find, when you deal with people from all around the world, I mean, how is that to see everybody sort of coming in and falling in love with what you've also fallen in love with?
It's amazing. Yeah, it's a feeling you can't describe because I'm a foreigner myself as well. I'm not a resident South African. Hey, I was born and lived for the most part of my life in Belgium, and it's amazing to see that there's so many people across the globe that are genuinely interested in wildlife and that do care about wildlife as well. And I've jotted some things down from the interview before, and one of those things was it always comes down to educating people.
Yes.
For me, or from my perspective, if you can educate or re-educate people, that's a big part of the war already won.
Yeah.
If you want to put it that way. And for me, it's just an amazing feeling to be part of that and to be able to contribute in one or the other way towards what we're all fighting for, and that's trying to preserve and conserve our wildlife and the nature around us.
I love that because that is a worldwide ambition. And that is something that we all share in common. And that's we talk a lot about on this show how a lot of it becomes divided. People they feel helpless. They feel like they can't do anything. And I love Wildlife Campus because it allows you to get involved. It allows you to jump in there. One of our viewers here, Kat, says, education is so important. Thank you all for educating us today and for the days to come. Going to learn so much more on Wildlife Campus after this. Oh, see, that's great. Oh, and Kat, by the way, Wildlife Campus has put together an amazing giveaway. We're actually going to give away an online anti-poaching course. So I'm going to give you guys some instructions how to do that in a little bit, because these guys are just passionate about sharing information. And Jonathan, I think you're right. The more you learn, then it becomes internalized to you. The moment you can sort of share something with somebody else, it becomes something that you hold in and defend. And so and then also the fact that you guys are able to do that, and then to get the money to places where it goes in the field. Can you talk a little bit about the in-field component, about how everybody sort of fits in together?
So basically, Wildlife Campus offers distance learning courses. It's a self-study, it's online. We've got 4 courses, or 4 main courses, which we still offer on paper. But on the practical side, Wildlife Campus itself does not offer practical courses. We work together with practical training partners. In the anti-poaching case, that's Gameways. They're a preferred practical training partner.
Gameways,
also,
put the
KAINAV.
link at the bottom as well, so everybody can get there. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Mhm. That's it. And there are a training partner, well, practical partner in the, the the actual anti-poaching training, the field training, huh? Um, with the wildlife campus course being compulsory for the ones who want to go and do the training, of course. And then there's also KAINAV Conservation Organization. They had, as earlier mentioned, a big part in rewriting and updating the anti-poaching course. And they're also they offer, for instance, once a month a snare walk,
What's a snare walk?
which they go basically in and they tackle an area. They go to a conservancy or a nature reserve, you know, and they go in with a bunch of volunteers. They do a short briefing in the morning, um, and then they go and sweep the reserve for possible poaching snares.
Wow. And I
Because
was, yeah.
if we talk about poaching, that's also another part of the poaching. A lot of people, if they hear about poaching, um, instinctively think about rhinos and elephants. Huh? Um, there's more poaching happening than just the rhinos and the elephants. Just also bushmeat is in certain areas. Bushmeat trade is a big problem. And that is one of the actions what KNAV tries to tackle. So they go in, sweep the area, collect snares, collect evidence as well, because they uh, collect the GPS coordinates of a snare. They take pictures. How is the snare set up? Um, and that allows them as well. The next time they come in, okay, do we find snares again in the same area or not? Hello, people. I'm Jonathan from Wildlife Campus. I've popped away from my computer and the live podcast for a quick short video in the field. I'm here with Kaylin from KAINAV Conservation Foundation. We're in the cradle of humankind. Anti-poaching wise, what have we been doing here? We've set up some camera traps earlier this week and now we came back to check them. We found some jackal, genet, also some birds, hey, the smaller stuff. But the camera traps also give us an idea, is there actual poaching going on in this area? We haven't found traces of humans on our traps, so that is good for us now. But we have been here before in the area with Kaylin. Kaylin is our partner. He reviewed our anti-poaching course. People sometimes ask us, how can we contribute towards anti-poaching? Well, my friend Kaylin would be one of them because he reviewed the anti-poaching course. So by buying a course of Wildlife Campus, the online anti-poaching course, of course, a certain percentage goes to Kaylin's foundation, which contributes again into anti-poaching efforts in this area. Kaylin, we've been here before on one of your initiatives that was a snare walk. Can you maybe just tell us a bit more about that and our listeners as well? What is the objective of a snare walk? How do we conduct a snare walk? And especially also, how can people from overseas contribute towards snare walks or your initiative?
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me, Jonathan. As Jonathan said, we're here in the cradle of humankind, and we, as KAINAV Conservation Foundation, run a number of snare removal operations, which is greatly assisted by Wildlife Campus's contribution through the anti-poaching courses that they provide. Our snare walks focus primarily on finding and removing poaching snares. In South Africa, as in many parts of Africa and Asia, snare poaching is a very common type of poaching. It's easy to come across the equipment, it's very easy to use, and so it's done by a lot of different people. This particular area that we're in, you can take a look. We're on a permanent water source, so there's always water for animals. There's a very, very well-used animal path behind us, and that all contributes to this area being easily accessible to poachers as well as animals. And so what we normally do is we sweep this area with a group of our volunteers and our facilitators, and we check hotspots. So hotspots would be areas where animals are forced through a particular area, choke points or forced choke points, where the poachers then put snares around these or over these trails. We come along, take down all the information, GPS coordinates, measure the snares themselves, and then remove them. And that's how the snare program works. Getting involved, well, there's a number of ways you can get involved all over the world. In fact, in South Africa, we offer monthly snare walks where people participate in. That's how we run, how we generate funds to run the walks and run the removals. But we also take those snares and we've created a community development program, and that's where we contract local underprivileged artists to create pieces of snare art, which are then sold to generate funds for the project. And that's available all over the world. If you contact us on our Facebook page, KAINAV Conservation Foundation, or give us a call, or send us an email at info@kainavconservation.org. We'll be happy to send over that information to you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Kalen, for that, and thanks for being here with us. We'll check out for now, and we'll go back to the live podcast. That was Kalen, one of our partners. So, guys, if you want to contribute, please check out their site. Bye now.
What is a snare trap?
It's basically how do you say that in English? A noose, like a noose. They put they're very inventive to put those traps. Hey? So they'll go in and also possible signs to find a trap would be like broken down vegetation. So they'll break down some trees on one and the other side of the trap, so the animal is basically coaxed in that direction to walk in that direction. Hey? Or they'll put a strap on the exit of a warthog's hole, and as soon as the warthog runs out, it finds itself snared and dies there. So then they'll go and collect. So if one of those interventions happens, and that's once a month, they've got the time to do that on top of their other activities. It's actually a good blast for the poachers in the area because they lose a lot of stuff as well. On the last snare walk, we're looking for snares, hey? But we happen to find a fishing spear as well, which is very inventively made of a piece of wood with a metal point on it, and they just put it in the fire. You can see it's they've been doing some forging on it and making some barbs on it, so they can just go and fish. And the fishing net is made of a old bag, hey, and it's hidden there in the trees. So if you can take that away, at least now he'll maybe think about not going back to that area, because there has been activity and his material has been taken away.
Yeah, I was going to say, are they pretty persistent, or do you find that they're always a new group, or are they kind of like different guys kind of trying to find new ways to sort of outdo what the system is?
They seem to be quite persistent, and also depending upon area, of course. Huh? We've been out here on a nature reserve where they've done regular snare walks and done snare walks, for instance, with school groups as well, teenagers. Huh? And there they found that it really had an effect, because on the last snare walks they basically came home empty-handed, which is a good thing. Because then at least you can see some evolution in it. Huh? There's other areas where they keep being very persistent as well. For instance, if there's an illegal settlement nearby and people are looking for food, then they get very inventive and also make, for instance, straps out of ADSL lines. The little strands of the fiber lines or ADSL lines, the different colored brands, they seem to work very well to catch smaller animals as well. Right? So it's not only rhino, it's also a hare being poached. And like you also previously mentioned, it happens anywhere in the world, basically, because if in Europe you go shoot a rabbit with a gun, in order for you to eat it, but you don't have a permit to go shoot that gun, well, basically you've poached the rabbit.
That's true. Yeah, a lot of times people think poaching, they think big scale, international sort of thing, but a lot of times it's very local. And then I imagine once you remove even a smaller prey item or anything from the whole cycle as it's supposed to be, will have sort of far-reaching effects on all the rest of the animals and people.
That's it.
Now, before we had a slight technical issue, but you guys sent me an amazing video, and if you don't mind, I'd like to take a few minutes to play this video of some of the training that everybody undergoes, because I just think it's amazing the devotion you guys have. There is a lot of easier, per se, causes that you could fight, but you guys have taken up, I think, like one of the bigger gauntlets here, and this is and it's amazing to see these guys, because they're not just doing this they're doing it because they're called to it, and there's an amazing attitude that seems to pervade from you guys to everybody in the program.
Latest news. The onslaught against our rhinos continues, as yet another rhino has been butchered by poachers, this time on a farm in the Limpopo province. Sources say that the rhino was still alive when poachers brutally hacked out its horn. The rhino is believed to be in a critical condition, as veterinarians are doing their best to save the animal. This is the 5th rhino poaching incident in the last 2 days.
The ongoing rhino war in South Africa is moving from national game reserves to private farms. This calls for more, better trained and better equipped anti-poaching operatives to protect the last living rhinos on our planet.
Die huidige situasie in Suid-Afrika met die renosters, dit is die grootste oorlog wat in ons land geveg word wat niemand van weet nie.
The 2019 figures indicate there is about 17,000 white rhinos left in South Africa. Almost half that number is privately owned by game farmers. Since 2010, the state lost almost half their rhinos, while rhinos in the private sector almost doubled. But the private rhino owners are battling to keep up with rising security costs.
En almal dink nee, Kruger Nasionale Park. Dink bietjie aan die privaat eienaars. Dink aan die renoster wat hulle het. Wat is die verskil tussen daai renoster en 'n groot park se renoster? Dis 'n renoster. As befondsing in kan tree en privaat eienaars bietjie kan befondsing gee, kan die renosters daar gehou word en dit kan geheim bly, en met die anti-poacher se hulp sal hulle daai renosters daar kan hou vir ewig.
Gameways is a non-profit company based near Steenbokpan in the Limpopo province of South Africa. Gameways grants people who want to engage in the fight against poaching the opportunity to qualify themselves as anti-poaching operatives.
And we need to really move from just reacting to poaching more forward to preventing it in the start so that it doesn't happen in the first place.
People that want to join in the fight against poaching must complete a Wildlife Campus anti-poaching distance education module and pass the Gameways fitness test before being allowed on the course. During the first part of the program at Gameways, students undergo competency training in firearms for business, a course in snake handling. They are taught bushcraft and survival skills. They are taught the art of tracking in the African bush and learn how to follow human tracks, even when counter-tracking methods are applied. They are trained in foot and vehicle patrols and squad formations, and how to disembark from moving vehicles as part of a rapid deployment team. They are taught the skills of covert operations, establishing observation posts and gathering of information. They learn the drills to follow during contact situations, such as fire and movement, and ambush when they come in contact with armed poachers. Having successfully completed this part of the training, the students prepare for deployment in a Big 5 reserve, where they experience animal behavior firsthand.
Om daai dier te kan beskerm, jy weet jy's die laaste lyn. Daai lyndrade en electric fencing, allerlei goeters. Dit gaan niks help nie want hulle as hulle deurkom gaan hulle deurkom. Jy is daai laaste, jy's daai baksteenmuur wat hulle nie kan oorklim nie.
There we go. I'm glad we got it to work and we got the sound back on eventually. But you know, it is an amazing insight into the amount of knowledge, information, and practical skill everyone has to have in order to do this. Now, personally, I don't know if I do very well at that snake training. I was going to say, what's you know, one of the things, one of the experiences you've had when you've been out in the bush where you faced something and went, whoa.
When we were at Gameways, I saw my very first black mamba. Hey? That was an experience where I was like, whoa, in the wild. Hey, other experiences include Gameways as well. Hey? A bleeding nose and a popped out shoulder. Because I wanted to take place because I wanted to take part amongst the students to do some self-defense training. Hey? But it's all very, you know, and usually also being a foreigner myself, I generally come to places and when I get there, I'm already like, whoa, and that's already enough for me. You know, we live in a beautiful country, and then we've got amazing wildlife as well, and just getting to experience that is already like, whoa. That's just
amazing.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, it's
amazing.
One of the most beautiful places, you know, that and I haven't been able to travel over there yet, but I always see it in images, and it's on my top, you know, and especially now to come down and see what you guys are doing, I think would be incredible. You know,
now you've got contacts, hey?
That's perfect. I'm ready. I better start training now if I'm gonna. I know those guys when they go out in the bush. That's, you know, that's the real deal business right there. You know. Now I was gonna say
it's a very hard training, yo.
Yeah, it's amazing. What's the average student size? Is it what we saw in the video? Maybe like 8 to 10 folks, or?
The last batch of students started off with 24, and I believe 13 graduated. So there's already a process of elimination. There's a month of self-study to go through, in which they do the wildlife campus course. And some other theory for their weapon license and all that stuff. So they must pass the theory course, and then it starts for them. But then it gets really heavy, because when they arrive at Gameways, they get their first tests, and the first tests are also physical tests, and they must be able to run 5 kilometers out in the Limpopo province there, where Gameways is based. And I can tell you, it's sometimes very hot there. I envy the students. I don't envy the students who are starting in January, hey, because that's plain summer for us, and that's above 30 degrees. And if you need to go jog 5 kilometers in under 30 minutes for your test and some other physical tests, then it's just normal that some people don't make the cut, I guess. But you must be very fit.
Amazing. It's amazing. And it just takes, I know it takes physical dedication and mental devotion to be able to stay in the game like those guys, are able to do. I mean, I've been out in the field in way less intense situations and barely made it through. So I have a lot of respect. And as we talked about earlier, too, it's a very dangerous thing that they do. They go to work knowing that they're literally putting their bodies between these poachers and the possible extinction of these animals. And that is, I think that's a very amazing, commendable, approach to
That's
life.
it. And also from our side, when the people graduate, for instance, in case of anti-poaching now, when they graduate from Gameways, that's big hats off from our side, eh? And not only for doing what they are going to do, but also for allowing us to come there and have an insight, participate with them. And I must say, every single group of students I've met there is really an amazing bunch of people. And in the end, we just feel like we've been taken in as friends, as part of the group, hey? And only we've participated for a couple of days maybe. And that's amazing, because that's a camaraderie at the highest level. And that's also what we like to see, because from our part, of course, the wildlife campus course unites us with them, and also they've all done the wildlife campus course, so that unites them as well. And it's always great to see that people just go out there and are prepared to go do that.
Yeah, it really is amazing to see, and I think, and it's a great too, because as it goes on, poaching becomes more and more of something people are aware of. And, I was reading that recently at the CITES convention, they were talking about trying to reopen the ivory trade, which I thought was kind of interesting, because there's the argumentation that maybe it being illegal pushes the black market. But, what we always found in my travels, and and that's why I think what you guys do is amazing, is enforcement. I went to places in the Philippines where their Coast Guard only had one boat, and that boat was on dry ground and it had a hole in it. And they weren't enforcing anything, And it's just a problem where a lot of government agencies are not given the funds that they need to do the enforcement. And you guys are sort of picking up that slack and saying, here's the people, here's the funding, let's make sure that we continue with this. And I think that that's amazing, because it really is a lack of enforcement in what you see. Now, with you guys having your program going, how do you feel, as far as adding this new enforcement, and what sort of victories have you seen that you can really, share with us?
I think also the whole poaching thing and the enforcement thing. If we want to make it twofold, maybe, because there's the public sector with the national parks and so on, where indeed in enforcing maybe less visible than it is, for instance, in the private sector, because there are places in South Africa, of course, private people who own rhino, and there is a place where more than 1,000 rhinos are, and they are just safe.
Nice. Yeah.
They seem to have no poaching incidents, and I believe that's just because there's very strong enforcement, there's very strong security, there's very strong visible security, there's camera security, whereas public parks maybe don't have the funds or the people to go and display that enforcement. But on the other hand side, if a rhino in a public zoo in the middle of Paris gets poached for its horn, then I wonder how much enforcement do we need to make sure this all stops. Hey? So again, I'm gonna re-divert to my. It boils down to re-educating people. Hey? Like said in the intro as well, it gets mentioned. The 16th century China medicinal use of rhino horn, hey? But rhino horn has been valued since the Greeks and since the early Persians in the 5th century before Christ. Hey? They made cups out of rhino horn and believed that the rhino horn would detect if your drink is spiked with poison, because then your drink would bubble.
Wow.
And there was if you see that some European royal houses kept that belief going till the 18th or the 19th century, then how are we going to re-educate people? How are we going to enforce enough to make this stop? Because since the 16th century, the medicinal Bible of China has been believed. Hey, does it help? Yes, there is apparently scientific proof that the rhino horn can bring fever down in rats, but you need a insane amount of rhino horn to bring that fever down in the rats. So in people, it'll never work. You'd need an insane amount, eh? But it's I think we're better off changing those beliefs than just go play Rambo and shoot everyone, huh?
Yeah, that sounds like a way better path. So do you find then that, as far as re-education goes, tradition, I guess, is being one of the biggest barriers to a lot of the cultures being open to changing the way that they think about it? I mean, to how it's a kind of an interesting question. How can we also re-educate those cultures that hold on to this? I know China and Vietnam are two countries I saw mentioned a lot in the black market research. And what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, I think it also boils down to the question, how come those people are poaching? Because the person performing the actual poaching is just a small link in the huge chain of events, of course. Hey? So re-educating and tackling at the base will be a priority, I guess. Hey? So because there's a lot of poaching going on out of poverty as well. Hey? And actually, to people who want to get a good insight on that poverty side of poaching, I can recommend a good book as well. It's called Poacher, and it's written by a South African guy he's Kimon de Greef, but I believe he's a journalist for the New York Times as well. Huh? And in that book, he goes on a journey with an actual with a former poacher who goes under a pseudonym in his book. He's called Shuhut, and Shuhut often states, like, there it goes on abalone poaching, which we haven't even mentioned yet. So there's a lot of poaching issues going on. We haven't talked about plants either. But to come back to the book of Kimon, Shuhut says at a certain stage he gets asked to dive up some abalone, and he gets paid minimal for that. But eventually he didn't even know what he was poaching. Right? So who's to blame there? The guy who's standing on the side and paying you, let's say $50 for a whole bag of, I need those clams, hey? And you don't know what those clams are, and you just go fish them up. Of course, later it became clear to him what he was doing, and he made more money as well. But then it shows in the end of the book, hey, Shuhud comes from Cape Flats and so. And at the end of his poaching career, he's left with no extra money from that, because people living in poverty, they also they prefer to invest that money in something they can hold on to, like a car, a big TV, support their family, have a horse, and all those kind of things. Because if you have a big stash of cash laying around in the area where they live, you're likely to just lose it. Right?
Yeah, very good point. It's true, and you bring up an amazing point too. And you know what? We're going to link that book as well after the podcast, so everybody can have access to it. It sounds like an amazing read. I'd love to read it. We found in the Amazon that the poachers tended to be people that were just barely surviving, and they knew the land. So you had bigger businesses exploiting their needs or their wants or their knowledge, even exploiting their indigenous rights in some instances to be able to remove things out. And we do find that it's very complicated, because you have sort of the low-hanging fruit, the people that are barely surviving, and they're not really the bad guys, although they're the people that tend to be the ones that go down for it. Not to excuse any poachers. Obviously, it's not, everyone makes that choice, but it is a difficult situation, because you do want to find those bigger companies. And I think something that often gets overlooked is it's us. It's us, the buyers. It's us, the buyers, that are creating the markets for all these things, which brings it back to what you say, re-education. And I love that, because it's what you guys are doing. You're offering brand new way of seeing this world through an online platform, and I just think that that's the key.
I think that's the key to every single aspect of it. If people poach out of poverty, then then re-education is just the key, and also getting the community involved, just like I mentioned as well, because people tend to believe that anti-poaching is you go out, you catch someone who's carrying a rifle, and he's too near to a rhino, and then you just decide to go over to action and shoot him. Meanwhile, he was carrying a rifle, and he was after the hare for some food for his family. Hey? Conclusions get drawn very quickly sometimes, and also firsthand I can say, because I at Gameways I had the opportunity to attend a lecture from a policeman who's very involved with the anti-poaching war, and he's firsthand on scene with every with most of the rhino slaughters going on in South Africa. Hey, and that was a lecture on crime scene management. And also the people at Gameways, they get imprinted like, hey, shooting is the very last option. Hey, that's if you are threatened with your life, you can go ahead and shoot. But apart from that, just think for a split second. Are you going to be able to prove that that guy had the intent of killing a rhino, or that he killed the rhino that he was standing next to? Are you going to be able to prove that? And next, also think about the life you are taking away, because cool, you can shoot poacher A, but he will be replaced by poacher B in the evening, because it all turns it keeps going, and it's a bit of a vicious circle as well. Eh? Because if poaching out of poverty gets done by one guy, I can tell you now, his neighbor is very tempted as well.
Yeah, and I imagine it's easy to replace those guys. There's definitely always in line.
And that's it. let's not forget they are also people, if you shoot the guy and he's got a family of 4 kids living 3 kilometers from where you shot him, who's gonna sustain his family now? And there's more perspective to it than just he's there to hack a rhino's horn. There's people commanding him to do it and people paying him to do it. And if he doesn't do it, someone else will probably just do it.
So violence is really no solution, although it may be a short-term result of whatever happens, but it's not really it's no way to save the rhino.
And also to come back on what was, I believe someone on the chat asked previously about painting rhino horns.
Yes, I was curious about that,
yeah. I haven't seen a rhino with a pink horn, but I also don't drink too much. But there's of course, tons of solutions that people come up with. You can paint it pink, so it's worth nothing, or, let's say, for medicinal use, or it gets poisoned, for instance, so it's useless for medicinal use. I know from a very good source that in a sub-Saharan country, the US government has sponsored GPS tracking devices. So it's like chips which they implant in rhino horn, and they have the ability to track those chips on highways. If you go through a toll gate or whatever, there'll be something picking up the chip at the airport as well. That's a project that is running. But then again, it comes down to what we've said before as well. I think boots on the ground is the first way to go. Because just like with money being made invalid when they do a cash in transit heist, for instance, we don't see the number of cash in transit heists going down in South Africa. So how is a pink rhino horn going to bring those numbers down if there's no boots on the ground? I think boots on the ground is again the primary thing, and the assistance which is going to be necessary for a very long time if we want to try and tackle this thing. Because
that's it. You got to have the front line, the guys on the front line. It's where, it's amazing how much stuff they'll just do out in the open if they think nobody's watching. And I think you guys have made them realize people are watching. So that's a huge dent in it right away. Now there's a lot of people on here too that are very interested to know, because that's one thing that it's really important here on the show, and it's important, I think, in conservation in general, is that we look in the face of a lot of bad news, but in that we have to find our inspiration on how to sort of counter it. And for everything, there is some form of solution, just like how you guys have started this up online. Now, a lot of people are asking, how can I help out? What can I do to help? And I think that there is it's beautiful, because now, even if you live in the US or the UK or all around the world, you can still help with the efforts. So if you can give us the best way to be able to help you guys and to be able to help in this situation.
I think the first way to contribute or do something towards is just join us. Check out Wildlife Campus, register, do some free courses, get some free knowledge. Also, if people want to contribute, by buying one of our courses, like said, a percentage of author royalties goes back towards, for instance, the Wilderness Wildlife Trust. Care for Wild Africa is also a very well-known initiative where we've got a nice course package we sell for. KAINAV Conservation, who was our partner in the anti-poaching course, And I think that's also important in a certain way, that people get value for their money. Because I've also sponsored people and donated money to certain organizations, and then they promise you, we'll send you 4 newsletters a year, and we'll keep in touch how everything is going. And I've seen 0 newsletters over X amount of years, but what did I actually get back for my money then, and what actually happened with my money? So if you want to join and also get something back for your money, which is, I think that's the coolest way of going about it. Because if you now buy the anti-poaching course, well, that's your anti-poaching course. You'll keep access forever to it. If there's an updated version in 2 years or in 5 years, you'll have the access to the updated version as well. But there again, you've got something for yourself. You can earn yourself a certificate. You can spike your knowledge, and you've made a contribution towards conservation. Yeah, that's it. You can also follow our Facebook page. We mention our partners there quite a bit as well. And like KAINAV, for instance, they do those snare walks, and I know they recycle the snares into snare art. So they make
that's great. That's a great reuse.
Keychains of it who look like a rhino, and they so they contract that out to local underprivileged artists as well, who then make a rhino or a giraffe or whatever kind of keychain, and they spray paint it, but it's made with actual snare that is collected from the bush. Right?
Oh, that's beautiful, and each one's one of a kind, and I love how you guys have found a way to expand your community so that you find ways of bringing everybody in together. And again, everybody go to wildlifecampus.com. It's like I said, I'm amazed by it. I'll actually put it on here in a few minutes and show everybody a little bit the website too, and make sure everybody jumps over, because if they go to that website, you got tons of free information and also ways you can help donate and ways that you can help Jonathan continue the work and help all of the other companies that he works with continue the work, because that's the other important thing. And it's like you said, where does the money go, and who am I helping, and what's happening? And there are so many groups that are all just sort of memes, whereas you guys are really there, putting people on the ground, putting people into the program. And also everybody that's watching, these guys are donating one online anti-poaching class, so you can learn all about that through here. And they're also giving a beautiful giveaway that if you use Conservation Conversation, when you write to them about a course, you'll get a 2-for-1 deal. So they're very into just wanting everybody to get in and get some information and share that knowledge. And like Jonathan, I think, said, the key today is re-education. And yeah, it's really beautiful the way you guys are doing that, I think.
I'm a firm believer, and that's also the nice thing. Like, if it's making a contribution, you can do that from all over the world. Like I said, we've got students in plenty of countries worldwide, and also the KAINAV website, for instance, is accessible worldwide, and I believe you can order, because I believe they've even shipped a big rhino or so made out of snare material to Walt Disney.
Oh wow. That's great. Yeah. That sounds amazing. I'm excited. I want to go check out what they're doing with that, because I love that idea. Yeah. Take it from something bad and make it something good. Resend out that energy.
It. That's the nice thing. And that also gets once again, that gets the community involved, and then maybe the underprivileged artist would otherwise be your poacher, and now he's making money out of snares that are collected out of the bush.
And you hit on something really important there, and I think Claire had mentioned it earlier. A lot of it has to do with finding alternate ways to make money. So, what's a poacher going to do? Well, I always think, well, if you think about it, it goes back to like the day of the blacksmiths and the guys who made the sword for the knights. They were eventually out of work too, and they found a different way to bring some income. It's the same. It's the same thing. It would be nice if poaching was this sort of dying industry. You guys are in a sense poaching that industry, which I love. And, I think that giving them an alternative way to make money is important. A lot of places will take, instead of hunting the animals, they will go and show them as a conservation. And I know you guys have a lot of like wildlife game reserves there where people can go and see animals in their own habitat. And, that's an amazing, I think that's probably on almost everyone I've ever spoken to's bucket list. Because there is an amazing part of our heart, our soul, and our imagination that live in these wild animals and in this wild area. And,
That's it, and
so yeah,
also
a lot of people. Yeah.
we can't deny it. We're right next to the cradle of humankind here. So it's where all human origin originated from, and I think that's why people are so drawn to South Africa and this part of the world, and I think that's why we really need to try and preserve it.
Love that. Now, Jonathan, I could still probably talk for a few more hours with you about this, but we're running low on time. So I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to add that we haven't really covered yet, because it's such a massive topic, and you guys have found a way to really give it to us in a way that we can understand it and see it, and also have an interaction with it and help. But yeah, I just wanted to see if there was anything else you wanted to add. Or
No, not really from my side. I was just I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity of having us as a guest on your podcast. I also want to thank, of course, the people who went through the effort of sitting here listening to me going on and on and on and on about it. And last but not least, also if any of the listeners still has questions or so, they must please feel free to just email us. I think Eloise can pop the email address there in the chat as well. And if they want to do a course, they must please mention in their subject line conservation conversation, because then they can choose a second person who can do the course with them. Hey? So they can both enjoy the course and that's it.
I love that. That's great. Thank you guys for sharing that and enabling the chance for two people to jump in. As they always say, two heads are better than one. And, so that's, the more heads that can be filled with this information, the better. And, there's more than anti-poaching on there. There's survival information. You guys have a really wide variety. You have everything from being able to go and seeing what kind of birds there are in the wildlife, to what kind of marine, conservation there is, to how to survive. And I found that amazing. There was how to survive guides for the ocean and the terrain, and you have different areas laid out. So it's just to let everybody know there's so much. I mean, the anti-poaching component is very important, but there's also a lot you can learn about nature and the world around you by going into these courses. And so I just wanted to, again, thank you guys for being here. And I see a message from you guys. Yes. And guys, how amazing is that? You can contact them directly. You can talk to Jonathan or Eloise directly at info@wildlifecampus.com. That is direct access to some real frontline warriors and people that can help point you in the right direction. And it's exciting to see everybody getting together like this. So thanks again for being on, Jonathan. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for the opportunity, and have a good day further. Eh?
All right. Thanks a lot, man. We'll talk to you again soon. All right.
Bye.
There we go. Oh, I've been lost again. Here we go. So, a couple little goofy tech issues on my part. There we go. I'm going to have to get... Here we go. So, today was incredible. I mean, I could tell everybody loved being able to talk to Jonathan. You know, of course, we had a few little bumps here and there. Technically, that's to be expected, as we just roll with it. But today, you know, we were talking about poaching, and we were talking about the fact that usually in the most devastating or darkest of times, you can find the most hope and inspiration. And we see that with the Black Rhino. We see that with what Jonathan and Eloise are doing. We see that with Wildlife Campus and all of their partners. And so it's amazing. And remember that we all have a part we can play. We all have something we can do. We all have something that we can contribute. Just because we're not in the same country doesn't matter. You know, it's the beauty of it. These guys have found a way to allow everybody to be able to jump in. So I'm wondering if I might be able to get, let's see, the website's on. No, looks like it's not going to work for me right now. So anyway, if you go to wildlifecampus.com, like I said, sign up. It's free. You get free classes. It really is amazing. And it's the thing that we always talk about, which is sharing knowledge, sharing information. As Jonathan says, the re-education, so we can start to cycle ourselves upwards like this mentally. And if schools aren't going to provide it, and if our politicians aren't going to provide it, and if our corporate news and our corporate shows are not going to provide it, let's provide it to each other, because, you know, we have, through our modern technology, we're the most amazing encyclopedia there is, which is what we all have right up here. So, you know, again, I wanted to thank everybody for being here. This was an amazing episode. It was really cool to be able to talk to them down in South Africa and to see the effort that's being put in to keeping the world in place for all of us. So anyway, thank you, everybody. It was good to see you guys, and stay in tune. Okay, so in order to find out, I almost forgot. Okay, real fast before we go, next week we have Dr. Clapper, who is an amazing vegan MD, who's going to be here, and also Allison Jade, and she's a vegan nutritionist. And what we're going to talk about is nutrition, health. Is veganism sustainable? And sustainability, as you know, for me, is always a big thing, and that involves food packaging. It involves food itself. It involves, you know, and Dr. Clapper does an amazing series on, you know, nutrition for non-vegans as well. So anyway, it's amazing. I'll put up some links for it. So next week, we're going to have an incredible conversation about if veganism is sustainable or not. But on this episode, before we go, if you're interested in the anti-poaching course, just send me a messenger. You're here on my Facebook. Just click on Messenger and send me a message, and tell me which animal in Africa you've always been, you know, most fascinated with, and the purpose behind that. And I would love to hear from you guys and hear your feedback on what animals you're concerned with, and any more information that we can help bring with that. So go ahead and message me, and then we will announce the winner of the anti-poaching course. And then don't forget, anytime you want to take a class at wildlifecampus.com, they're going to give you a 2-for-1 deal if you put conservation conversation in the subject line. So, I mean, I'm very flattered to be part of it, and I'm just excited. We got to talk to them today and talk about sharing information, talk about poaching, set some facts straight about anti-poaching. And, you know, we have to get rid of this idea of the Chinese medicine as being a model for what's happening. We cannot continue to destroy these animals that are almost extinct on medicinal information that comes from a time when there was no medicinal knowledge. And if there might be like an inkling of truth to some of it, but none of it is really necessary, and none of it is worth the cost or the price of extinction. So anyway, I love to see you guys. It's our world. Let's talk about it. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.